The transmission began with static, sharp, distorted, barely more than noise. Then, slowly, a voice emerged, cracked with age and pain. They said humanity was too fractured to matter, so we couldn't unite long enough to pour tea, let alone wage war. Then they touched Earth. Just once. The recording looped. Over and over. Nobody knew who had sent it. It wasn't signed. No watermark. No encryption. Just raw data, bouncing through pirate beacons and ghost satellites, spreading to the outer colonies like a virus with purpose. And everyone who heard it felt something shift. Captain Sarah Miles stood inside the command module of the Eidolon, her eyes fixed on the spectral flicker of the message playing across the data wall. She was quiet, and in her silence, her crew mirrored her stillness. She had seen war, had lived long enough to be jaded by everything. But not this, not the tremble in that old voice, not the aftermath the words promised. Lieutenant Rook leaned in, face pale under the low-red emergency glow. The signals triangulating from Sigma Verge. Outer ring. No Concord presence within 100 light years. Sarah didn't speak. Her fingers hovered over the edge of the console. The words played again. They touched Earth. Just once. She remembered the rumors. Whispers about an unprovoked Concord raid on a civilian outpost along Earth's shadow orbit. Officially, it didn't happen. Concord High Command had denied everything. No casualties. No war. No consequence. But the outpost had gone dark. Everyone on it, technicians, settlers, children, gone. And Earth, fragile bureaucratic Earth, had issued no retaliation. Only silence. Until now. Rook cleared his throat. You want to respond? Sarah turned to him, her voice flat but clear. Plot a course. Sigma Verge. He hesitated. Captain, we're not cleared for... I didn't ask if we were cleared. He nodded once, sharp and fast, and moved to obey. She remained, staring at the words as they looped. Just once. It wasn't rage she felt. It was recognition. A quiet confirmation of what she'd feared for years. That Earth was no longer seen as sovereign. No longer a player. Just background noise to a larger game. That had been the Concord's greatest miscalculation. In Sigma Verge, far from the comfort of any safe corridor, a man moved through darkness. No name. No identification. Only scars and silence. The colonists called him Revenant. Not because he was ghost-like, though he was. Not because he came from the dead, though he might as well have. He was a reminder. He walked the cratered edges of abandoned mining camps, surveying burned-out vehicles and shattered domes. The last place they'd hit. The last graveyard. His breath didn't shake. His pulse didn't rise. But his memory, sharp and relentless, replayed every scream, every fire, every fragment of the life they took from him. Her name had been Eris, 10 years old, bright, curious. She had drawn stars on every surface of their small habitat pod and talked endlessly about what she would be when she grew up. Ambassador, explorer, singer. He'd encouraged it all. He'd even built her a telescope from scavenged lenses and drift glass. She never saw the strike coming. Neither did he. The Concord hadn't sent warships or soldiers. Just one recon cruiser with orders to neutralize irregular human expansion. They saw the colony as unregistered, illegitimate, disposable. Now the Revenant moved from system to system, tracing lines of bureaucracy back to names, and the names led to targets. Every death he delivered was clean, efficient, silent, not out of mercy, but out of principle. He wasn't a butcher. He was a scalpel. At the edge of Sigma Verge, the Eidolon dropped from FTL, her frame groaning under the stress. Sarah stood with her crew as they scanned the system. No ships, No stations. Just wreckage. Anything transmitting? She asked. Rook shook his head. Just a message on a loop. No origin traceable from this side of the system. Sarah narrowed her eyes. Then someone doesn't want to be found. Or they won't be heard. Rook finished. She nodded once. The sensor tech, a wiry woman named Kale, turned from her terminal, picking up residual radiation signatures. Not natural. Controlled pulses. Could be breadcrumbs. Sarah moved to her. Breadcrumbs to what? Kale hesitated. Honestly, Captain? Looks like a trap. Sarah smiled, thin and humorless. Good. Maybe we're the bait. They followed the pulses, ancient, patterned, almost musical, toward the dark side of a nearby moon. As they descended, they saw the wreckage. 3 Concord patrol vessels, half submerged in the moon's ash fields. Hulls carved open with surgical precision. Not destroyed. Disassembled. Someone had taken them apart piece by piece. Life signs? Sarah asked. None, Kale replied. She exhaled slowly. Prepare team. On the moon's surface, they moved through the ruins. No bodies. No blood. Just silence and symbols carved into the walls of the gutted ships. Human script. Names. Dates. Sarah stopped before one panel and reached out to touch it. A name she recognized. Calrisol, a Concord diplomat, one of the signatories of the Unilateral Enforcement Protocol that had condemned Earth's outer colonies as unregulated threats. She had seen his speeches. Slick, polished, inhuman, in all the ways that mattered. He was still alive. At least, last she heard. Rook stepped beside her. Captain, I know. This is retaliation. No, she said softly. This is a reckoning. She felt it in her bones. Someone had made it personal. And as she stood there, surrounded by the ruins of Concord power, she realized this wasn't a cry for help. It was a warning. Back aboard the Eidolon, the crew examined the data they collected. Patterns emerged. Coordinates embedded in the radiation pulses. A trail pointing toward the core systems. Not just any location. Ecliptic Throne, the Concord's administrative nerve center. Rook looked at her. You really think someone's planning to strike the heart of the Concord? I think someone already has, she said. And if we follow this trail, then we'll see what happens when you push a human too far. Half a galaxy away, the Revenant stood atop a derelict Concord communications array. He looked down at the flames licking the horizon. The last of the data he needed had been extracted. The list of names was complete. At the center of it all, Calrisol. He remembered the man's face as he justified the extermination order with a smile. The Revenant didn't care about the Concord's laws. He didn't want to start a war. He wanted them to feel her name, to carry it in their minds like a curse. Eris, a child, a dreamer, and proof that monsters don't live in shadows. They sit in thrones. He uploaded the next message. This one had no voice. Just a single image, a child's drawing of a family beneath 2 suns. And beneath it, a caption scrawled in shaky handwriting. I want to see all the stars. The Revenant turned his gaze skyward. It was time. The death of Counselor Thren had shaken the upper echelons of the Galactic Council, but they refused to acknowledge the fracture. In public, they paraded strength. Diplomats postured. Spokesbeings gave measured statements, and the media circuits recycled hollow condemnations. But behind the gleaming facade of order, fear spread like rot. The Revenant moved without pattern. No species, planet, or fortress was exempt. What began as whispers of vengeance evolved into the tale of a ghost. An impossible man who emerged from nowhere, killed without being seen, and vanished without trace. A myth with blood on its hands. Inside Earth's Defense Command, the brass didn't speak his name. Officially, he did not exist. But in secured chambers, when the feeds dimmed and only encrypted channels remained open, they monitored his progress. Not to control him. No one controlled the Revenant. They simply tracked the storm's path. Some argued he should be stopped, that Earth's place in the galactic order was too fragile, its alliances too valuable. Others, usually those with dirtier pasts and war-born instincts, said nothing. They remembered what the galaxy forgot. War isn't always about armies. Sometimes it's about a single man with a mission, and the Revenant had made his next move. Counselor Varn Rilo of the Threx Dominion had been vocal about human containment. He'd championed the vote that condemned Eris Calderon. Unlike Thren, he didn't live behind crystalline walls or hover citadels. He preferred movement, luxury caravans, ever-shifting locations. He believed mobility ensured safety. It didn't. The Revenant stalked him across 3 systems, dismantling his security piece by piece. First, the Exo-Bodyguard ship disappeared en route to escort duty. Then, 2 of Rilo's data analysts were found dead, one poisoned mid-meal, the other crushed in a degrav failure during travel. Rilo, spooked, tried to vanish entirely. He didn't realize the Revenant had been aboard his vessel for 2 days. When Rilo finally noticed a missing crew, he found them suspended from the ceiling of the command deck, alive but unconscious, trussed in harnesses like prey. A small recording device played beside them. Eris's laughter. He screamed. His guard surged into the room, weapons drawn, only to find Rilo babbling incoherently in a corner, eyes fixed on the word scrawled in human ink across the control console. Balance. They searched every duct, every pod, every crawl space. Nothing. And yet 2 hours later, Rilo was dead. Electroshock overload directly into his neural implant. Instantaneous. Silent. No entry logs. No sensor breach. Only a single feather left behind. Synthetic. From an Earthchild's art kit. By the time the Council was alerted, 3 more names had vanished from Leora Calderon's list, and she was no longer hiding. In a secure satellite broadcast beamed into Earth's orbit and intercepted by every listening ear in the galaxy, Leora spoke, not as a diplomat, but as a mother. "No more silence," she said. Her face was pale, drawn, sharpened by grief. "My daughter was not a casualty. She was a child, and I will not ask for justice from those who call her death a necessity. I will take it." The Council dismissed the broadcast as propaganda, but fear makes ears sharper. Across border worlds and fringe systems, her words struck chords, some of sympathy, others of dread, because now it was clear this was no longer a rogue act of revenge. This was a reckoning. This was human memory made manifest. In the shadows of Citadel Enix, the Council convened. Elite factions debated retaliatory measures. Some called for an official declaration branding Leora and the Revenant as intergalactic terrorists. Others, more cautious, urged restraint. The pattern was terrifying, not because the Revenant struck without warning, but because each strike was precise, flawless, undeniable. They were facing something surgical, something ancient. "We need to speak to the humans," said a grizzled Zendari admiral. "Not their politicians. Their soldiers, the ones they keep in the dark places of their world." But the others laughed, because they still didn't understand. Meanwhile, the Revenant moved again. This time he didn't kill, not immediately. He infiltrated a private conference on Iskareth, where several high-ranking Council strategists were discussing defense contracts and planetary security upgrades. The security for the meeting was airtight. Pulse barriers, drone sentries, anti-telemetry grids. None of it mattered. The meeting paused and the lights flickered. Just once. A blink. When they came back, every screen in the room, displayed the same image: a child's drawing, a house, a sun, a stick-figure family, a tiny signature, heiress, and beneath it, the words, "How many more need to die before you remember what life means?" Security teams flooded the room. Nobody had entered or exited, but when they scanned the meeting table, they found something embedded into the wood. A knife, primitive, human-forged. Its hilt was carved with coordinates, and a date, 3 days hence. Back on Earth, Leora watched from a hidden facility deep beneath Antarctic ice. She saw the feed, saw the panic, but she didn't smile. There was no joy in vengeance, only necessity. She reviewed the list again. 5 names remained. All were architects of the resolution. All had cast votes that sealed Eris's fate. Each carried different sins. One had orchestrated the false intelligence that painted Leora as a threat. Another had bribed delegates to ensure the vote passed. A third had been the one to sign the kill order itself. Cold, efficient, bureaucratic murder. They thought their crimes buried beneath protocol. But Leora remembered every moment. So did the Revenant. As the date approached, the Council considered evacuating the sector listed in the coordinates. But doing so would reveal panic. So they waited, watched, and on the 3rd day in the orbital skies above Danthraxis Prime, a Council convoy exploded in full view of planetary news feeds. The blast was clean, surgical, no civilians harmed. Inside the wreckage, forensic drones found the remains of Counselor Vex Rad, the man who'd signed the kill order. His body had been moved, deliberately placed aboard the ship after the explosion. No other passengers had been aboard. In his hand was a datapad, 1 video. Eris in her room, telling a bedtime story to a plush toy. Then silence. The screen faded to black, and a final message appeared. She remembered every story. Now the galaxy will remember her. The Council tried to suppress the footage. It spread anyway. On fringe colonies, humans were no longer seen as newcomers. They were whispered about like ancient storms, chaotic, furious, unpredictable, not because they sought war, but because once wounded, they never forgot. A pattern was forming. The Revenant was not striking randomly. Each kill was a thread in a tapestry, a story written in blood and memory. Back in the ice-locked chamber, Leora stood alone. She stared at a hollow display of her daughter's favorite constellation. She whispered, "Almost done." A voice responded from the darkness. "The Revenant. 3 remain." She nodded. "Are you ready for what comes after?" he asked. She turned. Her eyes weren't soft anymore. "No, but I'll face it, just like she would have." He said nothing, just inclined his head. Then he walked away, toward the next name, toward the end, and the beginning. The next name on the list was Counselor Firinja, an architect of silence. He was not a man of public cruelty or overt aggression. He didn't shout during the vote that condemned Eris Calderon. He whispered. He negotiated. He made himself useful to all sides and hid behind consensus. It was Firin who devised a legal framework that allowed a child's name to be buried beneath classified threat. He didn't kill Eris directly. He just made her death possible. For that, he would be made to remember her. The Revenant tracked him to the moon city of Zephyr Vale, where towering crystal domes shimmered under permanent aurora. Firin was attending a charity gala for displaced youth, a farce cloaked in virtue. He smiled easily, shook hands with grace, and spoke of interstellar compassion, without choking on the irony. The Revenant entered the city 2 nights before the gala, slipping through conduits and industrial corridors forgotten by most. He studied Firin's habits, his guards, his escape plans. The man lived behind layers of luxury and protocol, secure in his illusion of immunity. Unlike the others, he feared scandal more than death. So death wouldn't be enough. It had to be memory. It began subtly. A letter delivered by a messenger drone, handwritten in Terran ink, placed beside Fearon's morning brew. His security swept it. No toxins, no hidden tech. Just a note. You've forgotten the cost. Let me remind you, Fearon dismissed it as a prank, burned the paper, and increased surveillance. But that night, during pre-gala rehearsal, the lights dimmed momentarily. When they returned, the stage projection changed. Instead of gala graphics, a child's crayon drawing filled the main screen. Heiresses again. A park, a swing set, a blue dog, her name in the corner. Guests murmured. Fearon froze. He called for the override. Nothing worked. The image held for 12 seconds. Then it vanished. The projection system rebooted, as if nothing had happened. Fearon didn't sleep that night. The next morning, a newsfeed broadcast was interrupted briefly on every screen in the central plaza. It was Eris's voice, laughing, humming a lullaby. No face, no context, just her happy, innocent. Fearon ordered the plaza locked down. He went underground, hiding in the hardened chamber beneath the administrative core. He believed steel and distance could protect him. That protocol would insulate him. The Revenant was already inside. He didn't come through the main doors. He didn't kill the guards or trigger alarms. He simply appeared, standing at the edge of the light like a shadow given purpose. Fearon turned, already pale. You don't have to do this, he whispered, backing away. The Revenant didn't speak. He reached into his coat and removed a small device. He pressed a button. A hologram flared to life between them. Eris, again, this time mid-sentence, talking to her mother about school. Her excitement spilled into every word. She wanted to be a diplomat, the Revenant said, his voice low, coarse. Like you once. Fearon's mouth trembled. I didn't kill her. You made it legal for others to do so. You gave them permission. I was trying to protect the Alliance. The vote. Spare me. The Revenant stepped closer. You hid behind procedure. You thought signing papers made you clean. But children don't bleed any less from authorized wounds. I didn't know they'd target her. But you didn't ask. You didn't stop it. You didn't care. He stopped a foot away. Now you will. Fearon flinched, expecting a weapon. But instead, the Revenant placed a small cube on the table beside him. She recorded hundreds of voice logs, he said. Stories, jokes, dreams. You'll listen to them, all of them, until you know her better than your own children. Fearon looked confused. You're letting me live? No. The Revenant turned toward the exit. You're already dead. I'm just making sure you hear her voice as the lights go out. The door sealed behind him. 3 hours later, when security found Fearon's body, the cube was still playing. His ears bled from the internal hemorrhage caused by an ultrasonically accelerated neural decay. But his face, frozen in rapture or horror, was staring into projection of Eris's smile. One more name was crossed off. Leora watched the report silently from her outpost beneath the ice. Her hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone white, but there were no tears. Just breath, steady and sharp. He listened to her, she said aloud, though no one was there. At least he listened. The Revenant sent no message that time. No note, no warning, just silence. But the galaxy was listening. The Council met again, this time in secrecy, aboard the Arc-Spine, a deep space diplomatic vessel drifting far from known hyperlanes. They believed isolation would grant them clarity. It didn't. 2 of them were gone. Another driven mad. Only 2 names remained. Counselor Isker the Junari Combine, who ordered the planetary blockade that prevented aid from reaching Eris's outpost. And finally, Supreme Minister Soul, the one who had orchestrated the entire vote, whose political weight tipped the scales. Isker was clever, paranoid. He didn't hide behind guards. He surrounded himself with uncertainty. No fixed location, no travel patterns. He lived in simulated environments that shifted daily. But the Revenant had time, and he understood one truth above all others. Fear creates patterns, and patterns can be hunted. In a rare moment of arrogance, Isker appeared publicly at a Combine ceremony, flanked by over 100 guards. He mocked the fear, called the attacks elaborate myths spun by those who don't understand galactic unity. His audience cheered, until the banners behind him caught fire. No explosive, no incursion, just sudden heat, targeted energy causing rapid combustion. Amid the panic, sprinklers failed, the crowd scattered. When they looked back at the stage, Isker was gone. His guards were dead. All of them. No wounds, no signs of violence. Just stopped, like puppets whose strings were cut. And on the floor, beneath the smoldering banner, lay a toy, a small plush dog, scorched to the edges. Isker was never found. No message followed. No threat. Just absence. And now, only one name remained. Leora stood in her chamber, staring at the counselor's name etched in cold light across her wall. Soul. She remembered his face, his voice, the way he delivered the verdict. Human expansion posed a systemic risk, he had said. Containment is not cruelty. It is prevention. He had smiled when he said it. She didn't ask the Revenant what he planned. She didn't need to. But that night, he stood beside her for the first time since the beginning. No weapons, no armor, just a man worn down by memory. You've changed, he said. So have you. She'd be proud of you. Leora shook her head. She shouldn't have to be. She should be alive. He nodded. After Soul, it ends. No, she said quietly. After Soul, it begins. He looked at her, and for a moment, the eyes felt warmer. You sure you're ready? I've never been more certain. In the shadows between stars, the Revenant prepared for his final act. And across the galaxy, the silence grew heavy. Because everyone knew what was coming. The ghost was no longer a myth. He was memory. And memory always returned. The Revenant stood before the gates of the Ecliptic Throne, the central bastion of the Galactic Concord, where Calrith's soul held court. The structure loomed against the void like a wound in reality. Black steel and obsidian glass fused with kinetic shielding. No alarm sounded. No security bot stirred. The silence was by design. Soul believed no one would dare come here alone. But that was a flaw. The Revenant had never been someone. He was what remained when names were taken. Inside, Soul sat in his throne, alone, in the center of a chamber built for thousands. He watched the hollow feeds, silent as each of his colleagues vanished. One by one, fear had taken root in the deepest parts of him, yet his pride grew like armor. He wore it to mask the rot. The Revenant's footsteps echoed through the hollow corridors. Not rushed, not cautious, inevitable. With each step, he remembered Eris, not just her death, but her life, her laugh, her endless questions, her fascination with stars. She had seen so much potential in a galaxy that had none for her. Guards lay unconscious at their posts, not dead, just removed. The Revenant knew there was no need for slaughter. They weren't the architects. They were tools. The real weapon was waiting ahead. Calrith stood as the doors parted, his expression unreadable. I expected a ghost, he said, not a man. The Revenant stepped into the circle of light. His face was bare. No mask, no pretense, just resolve. You made a mistake, he said. Soul raised an eyebrow. Only one. You thought your position made you untouchable. I don't hide behind power. I wield it. You hide behind policy, behind consensus. But I've seen what you are when the room is silent. And what's that? Afraid. Soul smirked. So what now? You'll kill me? Martyr me? I'll be a banner for your cause. The Revenant shook his head. You won't be a banner. You'll be a scar. He reached into his coat and removed a sphere, a neural emitter laced with memory-tethered recordings. Not holograms, not simulations. Real sensory captures from Eris's childhood. The feel of her breath on a winter window. Her joy on her first space ride. Her voice, recorded during a moment Soul never knew existed. You don't deserve to forget her, the Revenant said. Soul eyed the device. This is your vengeance? Sentimentality. It's justice. You killed her with bureaucracy, with words. Now you'll live with her truth. He activated the sphere. It floated between them, casting light and sound into the room. Eris's voice filled the chamber, reciting a speech she had practiced. Her dream to join the diplomatic corps. She stuttered in the middle, laughed, tried again. Soul's expression cracked. She wasn't a threat, the Revenant said quietly. She was 10. Coward stepped back, suddenly smaller than his throne. You don't understand what was at stake. The humans were expanding too quickly. The balance. She wasn't the balance. She was a child. She could have grown up to destabilize. She could have grown up. The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with everything the Concord had tried to bury. The votes, the signatures, the lies, and above it all, the sound of Eris's voice, free, unfiltered, human. The Revenant stepped forward. You will not die today. Soul's eyes narrowed. You think letting me live will change anything? No, but making you remember will. He walked past the throne, placing a second emitter on the console, this one broadcasting system-wide. Already tied into the communications relays, it would loop the memory sequence for 7 solar days across every Concord channel, every citizen, every system. Eris's story would be told. You won't stop the council, Soul growled. You're all that's left. Soul surged forward, desperation replacing pride. He reached for a hidden blade beneath the throne's arm, but the Revenant was faster. He caught the minister's wrist mid-motion, twisted gently and forced him to his knees. Not a violent move, not cruel, just unignorable. Tell me her name, the Revenant said. Soul resisted. Say it. He hesitated, then whispered, Eris Calderon. Louder. Eris Calderon. The voice echoed off the high ceiling. 1,000 surveillance nodes captured the moment. Good, the Revenant said. Now you'll remember it for the rest of your life. He released him, turned, and walked away. Soul remained kneeling, breath ragged, face stained with the weight of recognition. He didn't call the guards. He didn't try to stop the broadcast. He simply stared at the emitter, which played Eris's song again, a melody she had made up while planting trees with her mother. By the time the Revenant reached the outer corridor, Leora was waiting. You did it, she said. No, he answered. We did. She nodded. The galaxy knows her name now. They'll forget again. Then we'll remind them again. He looked at her, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself a small smile. You're not like me. No, she said, but I am because of you. Together, they left the ecliptic throne behind, not with fire, not with blood, but with memory. In the days that followed, the broadcast could not be stopped. Entire systems paused to listen, to watch, to remember. No message accompanied the footage, no claim of responsibility, just a child's life, too short, too beautiful to ignore. Empires shuddered, Protests rose. Questions were asked that had no easy answers. Who gave the order? Why was she deemed a threat? Why do we always realize too late? And beneath the growing tide of voices, a new name emerged. Not the Revenant, not the Ghost. Eris. She became a symbol not of vengeance, but of what should never have been lost. Her laughter echoed across space stations. Her drawings hung in schools. Her dream to be a diplomat became a rallying cry. And Kara's soul? He lived, alone, isolated, a prisoner not of a cell, but of memory. Every hour, her voice returned. Every night, her image played on loop. No power remained to him, only silence and the echo of a name. The Revenant never appeared again. Some say he died in the void. Others believe he watches still, waiting for the next injustice to rise. Leora returned to Earth, not to rest, but to build. She joined the human diplomatic corps, the same program Eris had dreamed of, and when asked why, she simply said, because she never got the chance. The galaxy would forget again. It always did. But someone would remember, and sometimes that was enough.